Dragons are among the oldest and most terrifying creatures ever imagined by human civilization, their presence stretching back thousands of years into the earliest recorded myths, whispered legends, and primitive cave markings. Unlike many mythical beings that belong to a single culture or region, dragons appear independently across nearly every major civilization on Earth, each with unique forms, yet all sharing an eerie resemblance that suggests something deeper than simple imagination. The question that has haunted historians, anthropologists, and storytellers alike is this: why do dragons exist everywhere in human memory? The earliest known depictions of dragon-like beings date back over 6,000 years to ancient Mesopotamia, where creatures such as the Mu were described as serpent-like beasts with horns, claws, and the power to strike fear into gods and men alike. These early dragons were not merely animals. They were symbols of chaos, destruction, and divine punishment. In the ancient world, where natural disasters could wipe out entire civilizations overnight, dragons became the embodiment of the unknown: earthquakes, floods, firestorms, forces that could not be controlled. In ancient China, however, dragons evolved into something entirely different. Known as Long, Chinese dragons were not evil but divine, celestial beings associated with water, storms, and imperial power. Unlike the fire-breathing monsters of the West, these dragons controlled rain, rivers, and the balance of nature itself. Emperors claimed to be descendants of dragons, and their authority was believed to be granted by these mystical beings. Yet even in this more benevolent form, dragons retained an element of fear. They were unpredictable, powerful, and capable of both blessing and destruction, reminding humans that nature could never truly be controlled. Meanwhile, in ancient Europe, dragons took on a far darker role. Medieval texts and folklore describe dragons as massive, winged reptiles with scales harder than armor and breath that could melt stone. These creatures were often depicted guarding treasure hoards deep within caves or ruins, symbolizing greed, corruption, and forbidden knowledge. Knights were sent to slay these beasts, not just as acts of heroism, but as symbolic battles between good and evil. However, many historians believe these stories may have been inspired by real discoveries: fossilized bones of dinosaurs unearthed by ancient people who had no scientific explanation for them. To a medieval mind, the skeleton of a massive reptile could only belong to a dragon. But the most chilling aspect of dragon mythology is how consistent certain details remain across cultures that had no contact with each other. Nearly every version of a dragon includes features like elongated bodies, sharp claws, serpentine movement, and immense power. Some researchers suggest that dragons may be rooted in humanity's primal fears, specifically, the fear of predators such as snakes, large birds, and big cats. Our ancestors evolved to recognize these threats instantly, and over time, the human mind may have combined them into a single ultimate predator: the dragon. There is also a darker theory, one that lingers in the shadows of historical speculation. Some believe dragons were not entirely fictional, but rather exaggerated memories of real creatures that once roamed the earth alongside early humans. Giant reptiles, now extinct, could have inspired legends passed down through generations, each retelling adding more supernatural elements until the creatures became the fire-breathing monsters we know today. Even today, discoveries of massive fossils in remote regions continue to fuel speculation that ancient people may have encountered something far more terrifying than we can imagine. Dragons also appear prominently in religious texts and apocalyptic visions. In many traditions, dragons represent the ultimate evil, chaos incarnate, an enemy of divine order. These depictions often describe dragons as multi-headed beasts, creatures of fire and darkness that rise during times of great destruction. Such imagery has persisted for thousands of years, influencing not only mythology but also modern horror and fantasy storytelling. As centuries passed, belief in dragons slowly faded, replaced by scientific understanding and rational thought. Yet the fear never truly disappeared. Dragons remain deeply embedded in human culture, appearing in literature, films, and folklore as symbols of both terror and awe. They are creatures that exist on the edge of reality, close enough to feel real, yet distant enough to remain mysterious. What makes dragons truly fascinating is not whether they existed, but why humanity has never been able to forget them. They are more than just myths. They are reflections of our deepest fears, our fascination with power, and our struggle to understand the unknown. Every time a dragon appears in a story, it carries with it thousands of years of history, echoes of ancient civilizations, forgotten beliefs, and the terrifying possibility that somewhere, in the darkest corners of the past, something inspired these legends. And perhaps the most unsettling thought of all is this: if dragons were purely imaginary, why do they feel so real?